Hello, welcome to our class. I know you are available and you are ready to learn. Now, quickly, before I introduce what I want to do today, I want to point out that yesterday we only had 131 students who attended class out of the about 500 students that we expected. So I've realized that some of you are not ready to learn. And that is why when I give out work, I expect to get good work. I'll not entertain any shoddy work because previously we had some students who did these students who did not do their work very well, but I pardoned them because I felt that maybe we had not guided them well. But now that we are going through this, I don't expect that. Make sure that you present good work. After this, we must get very good work or very good report when we meet in class. So we looked at the historical development of comparative education and we said I gave out the objectives of the lesson very clearly that you are supposed to be in a position of highlighting the main phases through which comparative education has gone through and its development. Secondly, I said that you are supposed to describe the main characteristic activities of each of the identified phases. And lastly, at the end of the lecture, you are supposed to apply the knowledge obtained in each phase to the current day uh, setup in our country. Now, I read some of your comments, and one or two people commented that I was too fast. And I don't know. You can always replay. You can always replay. And if you can't, then no, but replay is there. You can always replay whatever you hear. So when you miss something, make sure that you replay. I want to take roll call. I'll be taking roll call in the next 2, 3 minutes. So if you are there, make sure that you are properly identified. We talked about first of all, I gave you the introduction. I gave you the seven phases uh, of in the development of comparative education, and we dealt with the phase of travelers' tales. The phase of travelers' tales. Just allow me to pick this. Hello?
Hello?
Yes.
Good evening.
Saying to you, I'm in class. Why can't you call later? Hello? Yes. Chalule, I can see you have joined. I don't know what your friends are still doing. Uh, so we looked at the phase of travelers' tales from antiquity uh, to 1817. And in this phase, we talked about uh, this person called Marc Antoine Julien de Paris, who published his famous book called Plan and Preliminary Views for the Work in Comparative Education. That one, this very famous scholar, you need to keep him in mind. Now, from yesterday's lecture, I want to give you an assignment, and those of us who repeat these assignments, make sure that you report to, do I give to F3 or to C1? Now this one, let this one go to F3. Now, this is the assignment. This is the assignment. Describe the contribution of the following scholars to comparative education. Describe the contribution of the following scholars to comparative education. The first scholar Xenophon, Xenophon 430 to 355 BC. I know somebody will say that this question was given to another group that presented last time. They did not do it well, and that is why I want it to be redone. Now, I'm not saying that they failed. I'm not saying that they failed. No, I'm saying that it was not well done, and I pardon them. I felt that they were not properly guided. And there is the same question that I'm giving out now to a different group. And this time, the threshold will be high. I expect more. So this is Xenophon, and Xenophon, this is how we spell Xenophon: Xenophon. Xenophon 430 to 355 BC. Uh-huh. The second one, Plato. Plato. Second one, Plato. Plato. Thirdly, we have Cicero. Cicero. And this one I want to spell Cicero. So Cicero 106 to 43 BC. Cicero 106 to 43 BC. Esther, I can see you are around. That is okay. Well, we have another one, another scholar. This is Tacitus. Tacitus, and this one I want to spell Tacitus. Tacitus. Tacitus 55. Tacitus 55 to 11 AD. Tacitus 55 to 11 AD. Another one, Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar 102 to 42 BC. Julius Caesar 102 to 42 BC. Another scholar, this is just one assignment. I'm giving it to one group. Another one is Mark Polo. Mark Polo. Another one is S. Well Williams. S. Well Williams. Another one we have Escalante. Escalante. And Escalante, that is Escalante. Another one, another scholar is Meto Risi. Meto Risi. Meto is Matteo, and Risi is Ricci. Also, I also want you to work on the contribution of Alexis de Tocqueville. Alexis de Tocqueville. Alexis is Alexis. D is De. Tocqueville, that is Tocqueville. This is someone from France. Another one is IBM. Hadum. Hadum is Khaldum. Hadum 1332 to 140. That is Hadum 1332 to 1406 AD. We also had this other one, Jacob Midanthrope. Jacob Midanthrope. Now, Jacob, you know how to write it. Midanthrope, this is Middendrop. We also have this other scholar, William Petty. William Petty. William, you know how to write William, but the second name, Petty, is Petti. Yes. We also have another scholar, and this is La Chalotas. Chatolas, and this is LA, that is La. Chatolas is Chatoluous, Chatolas. We also have Diterot, Diterot, and this is Diderot. Another scholar of our concern is Condorcet, Condoret, and this one, Condorcet is spelled as Condorcet, Condorcet. Another scholar is I Tsing, and this one you write I hyphen Tsing. Another one is Suleiman the Merchant. Suleiman the Merchant. Now, the contribution of all those scholars must be put in place. So the group that is going to do that, make sure that you look at the contribution of all these scholars to comparative education. And remember, we looked at what? We looked at the traveler's tale, traveler's tales. So you are going to discuss that question in the light of traveler's tales. If you missed yesterday's class, kindly revisit, listen to it again before you attempt that question. Because this time I not want shoddy work. I want very good work. Um, Before we carry on with what we are supposed to do today, may I get it from you whether you are getting me loud and clear, or maybe my voice is weak, faint, or so. Can I see that? Can you write in the comment section? I want to see them. Chelule, what do you say? Esther, what do you say? Yes, I'm waiting for your comments. Are you getting me clearly, or you have problems here and there? Silence means what? Silence means? Okay, thank you for your comment. Now, thank you. It is okay. Now, today we want to move and talk about the phase of selective education borrowing, or the phase of pioneers. You remember yesterday we talked about traveler's tales, the phase of traveler's tales. But today we want to talk about the phase of selective education borrowing, or that we may refer to it as the phase of pioneers. Now, the aftermath of the French Revolution, that is Industrial Revolution, Agrarian Revolution, and the presence or the process of colonization characterized the 19th century Europe. Most education reformers of the time were disturbed by the social and the political conditions of revolution and the reactions of the early 19th century Europe. They saw means of moral improvement and social emolument. Reformers were concerned that the ability of individual school system to improve themselves seemed limited even where there was no good intentions. Since I was accused by one of you that I was too fast, I want to come up very clearly so that he gets it. Say that this is the second phase that we are dealing with among the seven phases that we identified yesterday. And this second one is what we are referring to as the phase of selective education borrowing, or if you don't want to call it the phase of selective education borrowing, you can call it the phase of pioneers. Now we are saying that the aftermath of the French Revolution, Industrial Revolution, Agrarian Revolution, and the process of colonization characterized the 19th century Europe. Most education reformers of the time were disturbed by the social and the political conditions of the revolution and the reactions of the early 19th century Europe in education. They saw the means of moral improvement and social amelioration. Reformers were concerned that the ability of individual school system to improve themselves seemed limited, even where there was a good intention. What was needed was some way of sharing the best ideas and practices available in many countries. This presented a significant change in the approach, suggesting a more systematic and comprehensive collection of data and selective borrowing in education. This period was geared towards the development of methodology or systematic rules to be followed in studying of comparative education. It was a drive to learn lessons from foreign education systems for the purpose of borrowing ideas. This period is considered a starting point of comparative education, which is associated with Marie Antoine Julien de Paris in his book Work Plan and Preliminary Reviews for Work of Comparative Education. He seemed to have had the foresight and concern for systematic approach to comparative examination of educational institutions and practices. Selective education borrowing was motivated by the desire to develop a methodology or system of rules to be followed in studying foreign system of education. There was a drive to learn. There was a drive to learn lessons from foreign systems for the purposes of borrowing ideas. Consequently, in the 19th century period, saw journeys to foreign countries by travelers with specialized interest in education matters. There were serious attempts to observation and study of other systems of education. Travelers no longer traveled for general curiosity and enlightenment. They wanted to discover what was going on in education sector in those other countries in order to borrow aspects for improvements for their own educational systems. So apart from the increase in the incident of trips to other countries in search for improvement for home system of education, the 19th century was noteworthy for the establishment of national agencies for the collection and dissemination of information about systems of education. For example, the United States Office of Education of 1867, the Musée Pédagogique in Paris 1879, and the Office of Special Inquiries and Reports in London 1895. There were various contributors who were accredited to this phase. They involved Marc Antoine Julien de Paris, Victor Cousin, Horace Mann, Henry Bernard, Matthew Arnold, K.D. Ashunki, and Peter the Great. And remember, at the end of this lecture, I'll give you questions on them. So you are supposed to follow this keenly. So allow me, friends, to start by looking at the work of Victor Cousin. Victor Cousin lived in France at a time when Europe was in chaos after the Napoleon Wars. There was need to bring reforms in France. He was a professor of philosophy and head of France's national schools. He investigated the education of Prussia with the aim of finding out how the French government could set about institutions, a national, a national system of primary education through borrowing. I want to come up again so that I'm not accused of having taken you very fast, the way one of you commented yesterday. I'm saying that we are looking at the work of Victor Cousin, and as I've pointed out, Victor Cousin is lived in France at a time when Europe was in chaos after the Napoleonic Wars. There was need to bring reforms in Europe at that time. He was a professor of philosophy and head of France's national schools. Victor Cousin investigated the education of Prussia with the aim of finding out how the French government could set about instituting a national system of primary education through borrowing. His work was to stimulate the French education system using foreign examples. There was, therefore, it heralded the beginning of borrowing as a motivation for conducting comparative education. In his report in 1813, Cousin recommended selective education borrowing from the Prussian experience. According to him, rivalries and antipathies were to be cut out of place. People of stature should not be afraid to borrow from whatever and wherever or whenever they need it. My friends, I think we are going on well, save for those ones who don't want to come to class to learn. Tell them that the going may be tough, but we must keep going. We must keep going because I don't want to produce half-baked fellows. I don't want. I don't want to produce people who are not ready. So allow me to move and look at the work of Peter the Great. So when Peter the Great embarked on his program of modernizing Russia in the 17th century, he set a precedent that has been assiduously followed by later reformers. He sought abroad for models of what his country could become. His answers to the questions were: what has made Britain and Holland great? So he sought answers for such questions. If you did not get me clearly, I want to repeat what I'm saying. That Peter the Great embarks on a program of modernizing Russia in the 17th century. And he set a precedent that has been assiduously followed by later reformers, not just reformers, but education reformers. He sought abroad for models of what his country could become. So he had some questions, he wrote down some questions for which he sought answers. The first question was, what has made Britain and Holland great? Another question was the existence of systems of training that gave them superiority? And this superiority was not just superiority, but superiority in industry, commerce, travel, and communication. Now, as a result, Peter, inspired by the English example of the Naval Academy and the Dutch example of schools of navigation, imported British teachers to staff similar schools in Russia. This precedent was continued in the effort of those in 19th century travelers. So, as we learned from Travelers Tales yesterday, we we discovered that the traveler sought to draw useful examples from foreign lessons. For example, although the century American educators were visiting the major European countries. English commissioners were inspecting European and American schools. Russian educators went to France, Switzerland, and Germany. Towards the close of the century, Japanese emissaries were sent to Germany, France, and England to bring back useful information for developing the Japanese school system. Officials from the United States visited the Soviet Union in order to examine the contribution of the Soviet education to Russian development. In the 19th century, as the reformers maneuvered to establish state responsibility for the provision of schooling, the precursors of modern comparative education were drawn to study particularly Prussia and then France as models of well developed national systems. In Prussia, laws requiring each loyalty to establish and maintain a school had been operating for nearly a century. In France, revolution and the Napoleonic regime had produced a system of secondary education to serve state purposes. Now, Mengich, you are raising your hand. Can you write your comment? I want to see your comment. Is it? Is anything a matter, Mengich? Is anything a matter? If not, say so that we continue. Glenda Mengich. So, Glenda is likely to have left the class again. Uh, if you don't have anything to say, then allow me move and talk about Marc Anthony Julien de Paris. Marc Anthony Julien de Paris. Now, this one existed between 1775 and 1848 AD. The prime example of work in comparative education motivated the desire to gain useful lessons from abroad is seen in the work of Julien de Paris. And we have said that Julien de Paris wrote a book called Plan and Preliminary Views for the Work of Comparative Education. This marked the beginning of modern comparative education the way we know it. Julien was not only a cosmopolitan at the time of intense nationalism, but also an exponent of French Enlightenment, a rationalist, and heir of the philosophy of Condorcet. He subscribed to the views of one who should look at the facts in a structured way and what was the basis of whatever you looked at. So he proposed that, or the proposals that he put across might be meant to improve the conditions of the society. So Julien lived during the Napoleonic Wars and was disturbed by the social and political conditions of revolution in early 19th century Europe. He saw education as a positive science which could be utilized to improve the French society through a systematic and rigorous approach of comparative analysis. Frustrated by politics part in it, he turned part of his energy to education improvement. He was essentially a practical man, referring to base all programs to improve education and society on systematic of what actually existed. He saw that the first task was to develop an instrument of collecting information on school in some of the France's or France neighboring countries. Julien drafted an elaborate questionnaire for this purpose, and he hoped that the resulting comparison will spur backward countries to develop their educational systems. Thus, he sought to do more than merely collecting objective data. He was ultimately concerned with the problem of dispersing knowledge uh, of educational motivation, influenced as he saw. So he wished to encourage a practical, child-centered educational methodology that emphasized, among other things, education of skills and preparation for life in society, all with a strong humanitarian emphasis. Uh, Friends, allow me to talk about John Griscom, 1774 to 1852. In America, education, um, so John is an American educator. He was too aware of the potential value of the schools for what is now termed as national building and for improving social conditions. They also hoped to find better teaching techniques and looked to Prussia, Switzerland, and Holland for models of systems of teacher training and supervision. John Grisham from New Jersey was one of the first to report on a year in Europe. In his preface, he cited three reasons for studying European education system. First, the United States was expanding her cultural and trade contacts with European countries and consequently ought to know more about Europe. Second, after a period of a bitter hostility between the United States and England, greater intimacy might lead to mutual understanding and a desirable practical of desirable relationship between the two. So finally, he submitted that there are lessons from America to be learned or to be worth learned to improve on European education system. Let us talk about Horace Mann, who lived between 1796 and 1856. Horace Mann reported on his grand tour of selective European countries in the 17th annual report to the Brand of Education of States of Massachusetts. He argued that if we are wise enough to learn from the experience of others rather than wait the infliction consequences upon our own errors, we may yet escape the magnitude and formidableness of those calamities under which some other communities are now suffering from. On the other hand, I do not hesitate to say that there are many things abroad which we at home should do well to imitate, some of which are here as yet mere matters of speculation and theory, but which they have long been in operation and now producing a harvest of rich and abundant blessings. Thus, man sees the value of borrowing as a way of mitigating the problems that are being faced with by a particular system of education. Man visited Prussia, Scotland, France, Germany, Holland, and England. So the experiences in these countries led him to produce that history provided with an explanation for the conditions that he saw. He saw the role of history in comparative education studies as which as that of eliminating present problems. He argued that many features of Prussian education could be useful in America despite the gulf he saw between the political and social ideals of these two societies. Chepkoech Olive. What is it? I can see you. Monoya Stephen. Yes, we are there. The only problem is that we have guys who are not coming to class. And these are the guys who will miss what to write and they will complain that they have supplementary. These are guys who are just waiting to graduate. Tell them there is nothing like that. They have to take the course. Masi Chepngetich, I receive your greetings. So Joseph K, 1821 to 1878. Though the British, though the British during this period were much less prone to look abroad for modes to emulate, there was some not to expectations. Joseph K. travels extensively in Europe to examine the social conditions and education of the people. K's motivation was to collect foreign examples of improvement in the condition of the poor. He observed that Europe had much to teach England. He noted that the remarkable improvement which had been witnessed in the condition of the great part of Germany and Swiss since 1800 AD, having been the result of the admirable, long continued education given to all the children and the division of land among the poor or the peasants. What about Matthew Arnold? Matthew Arnold was a school administrator, poet, literary critic, political and social observer. He was active in establishing a national system of education, particularly secondary schools. His practical studies of the French and German system, which included the detailed historical and statistical material, were designed to make a particular case for reform in education in England. He advocated for the expansion of the state activities in education because of what he had seen himself on tour that took him several times to the continent of Europe. He called on the people of England to look at what the French and other countries in particular continent were doing. So he advocated for the expansion of state activities in education because of what he had seen himself on tours that he took to the continent of Europe. If this were done in England or something on the same principle, then the English system of education would be better. He stressed borrowing of positive points from the continent. He cautioned on the dangers of making comparisons based on analysis of inadequate statistical data or data. Now, let us look at the work of Leo N. Tolstoy, who lived between 1828 and 1910 AD. Leo N. Tolstoy, Leo N. Tolstoy is one of those observers who traveled abroad to inspect educational institutions but simply rejected the foreign models outright. He was a writer, educator, and a social critic. He was among those in the 19th century who invested them with comparative education but was disenfranchised with what they saw. He returned from Western Europe convinced that what he had observed in foreign educational systems was completely unsuited to the further development of schools in Russia. Tolstoy, Tolstoy was looking for an education that would set human free. He asserted on his return to Russia in the year 1862 that he had found abroad only what would make people slaves. Consequently, he rejected the outright borrowing of Russia from West, especially northward. Tolstoy vehemently rejected the Prussian system of education Prussian schools were widespread among comparative observers, whether from representatives or autocratic systems. Now let's look at the work of Henry Bernard. Henry Bernard. Though he was impressed by the superiority of European teacher training system and schooling, he voiced similar doubts like those of Holland and Tolstoy. He asserted that Europe still did not manage to turn out such practical and efficient men as the American Commonwealth schools, acting in concert with their religious, social, political institutions. If the aim of bringing up the young people is not merely institutions, he argued, but with the building of the national character, the school is not everything. The quality of its output would be determined by a combination of influence derived from school, home, and society. So, according to him, school was not everything. It was supposed to be combined with the home and the society at large to build a person. Thus, though foreign institutions may be admired, they are not to be borrowed without care. So, that is what he cautioned. So, what were the characteristics of this phase? What were the characteristics of this phase? It is very important for us to look at the characteristics of this phase. Now, Sonia, Vela, you are getting me. You are saying that you are getting me clearly. We have abdomen with this abdon. We have Shadrach, Kituka, Mercy, Chepngetich. Friends. Where are your friends? Where are your friends? These are people who will give us problems because we are giving them questions and they when those questions have not been well attempted to. Now henceforth questions must be looked into with a lens, a proper educational lens. Okay, characteristics of this phase. This phase comprises of cataloging of descriptive educational data and then the comparison of data with the hope of yielding the best educational practices as lessons of borrowing. The main motive of this comparative education was utilitarian. The studies were descriptive in nature, but hardly analytical. Moreover, most writers in this stage of comparative education ignored not only the rather obvious pitfalls of cultural biases, but also the technological problem arising from international differences in terminologies and statistical procedures. Relevance of educational borrowing to present day educational theory and practice. Remember, this question was given to a group, and that group did not bring it out well. And again, I have not seen the members of that group here because I picked their questions, I picked their work, they have decided not to attend this class. I've been very keen. None of them is attending this class. God forbid. May I not say what I want to say? So, despite the above shortcomings, the shortcomings that I've mentioned, this phase is relevant to present day theory and practice in education. First, they were mainly descriptive and utilitarian in purpose. Descriptive studies are features that are still relevant in education theory. Those of you who will be coming for masters, you are likely to carry out a descriptive study. We have a method called descriptive survey. So some of you are likely to use that one. So we also endeavor to make educational more utilitarian. Second, we still have visits to other countries or institutions for the purpose of observing what may be of value to be brought back to our country home. Remember, at the moment, we have a team of scholars, university professors who have been sent out to come back and report about how we can implement CBC education in our universities. Up to now, those people who looked at that cut, the previous cut, the Rebecca and the group, you know that you got very little on university education in Kenya. Why? Because we have university professors from various universities in Kenya who have been sent out there to go and study whatever is happening and will be brought back to class. There is somebody, ZP, you are complaining, ZP Mbone, you are complaining that you were supposed to be told that the class is on. I told you that it is very simple. You subscribe and you will always be told when the class is there. You will not need somebody to tell you that the class is on. You will be notified whenever we have a class and whenever we post something. I've said not once, not twice, but very many times that the moment you subscribe, you will always be notified when the class is on and when anything new has been posted. So remember, we are talking about the relevance of the phase of education borrowing to present day education theory and practice. So this is another relevance that there is the importance of learning from experience of others in order to improve on institutions of our own. Now, we will be fools, friends. We will be fools to wait and learn from our own mistakes in CBC. Remember, CBC has been implemented in other countries. CBC has been implemented in Finland. CBC has been implemented in Russia. CBC is being implemented in China, in Japan, in UK. So these countries have already and are still implementing CBC. If we are wise enough, we need to go there and study the problems that these countries have been faced with during the implementation of CBC. And the moment we see those problems, we will come back and modify our education system, our CBC, and see how we can avoid falling trap or falling into problems or facing similar problems, similar challenges that have been faced in those countries that are already implementing it. Something else that will be important to us will be if those people faced the problems that they faced during the implementation of CBC, how did they go about it in solving those problems or in mitigating those problems? So, how they solved their problems may be important to us to see or to prepare how we are supposed to solve those problems should they come. Now, with that, allow me to give you some more questions. Now, these questions go to C2. C2. Uh, um, I don't know, the class rep is also not in class. Are you there? C2. I've not seen you. You're not in class. And yet you're supposed to pick these questions for your group. I don't know. Now, the first question for C2: what is the modern day example of traveler's tales? Or day, describe the modern day examples of traveler's tales. That one refer to yesterday's lecture. Now, question two for F2. James, I can't see you also in class. I don't know what you are going to do. James, this is for your group, the second question for your group. And a group should not be made up of more than three people. So, James, describe the contribution of the following. Describe the contribution of the following scholars to comparative education. Describe the contribution of the following scholars to modern day to the growth of comparative education. The first one, Marc Antony Julien de Paris. The second one, Joseph Kay. Thirdly, Matthew Arnold. Fourthly, Leo N. Tolstoy. Another one, Francis Wayland. Another one, Henry Bernard. Another one, K.D. Ushinki. Yes, make sure that you discuss their contribution. Now, another question. This is the second question for C2. Aisha, this is your group. This is your group. You'll give it to one of the groups in your class. And unfortunately, you are not in class. I don't know how you are going to get it. Uh, Explain the relevance of selective education borrowing. Explain the relevance of selective education borrowing to present day education theory and practice. Explain the relevance of selective education borrowing to present day education theory and practice. That's one you are supposed to refer to what we have done today. Now you will only choose, or the first group to report to you will be the group that will present in class on Wednesday. Now, those who are yet to subscribe, make sure that you subscribe so that you are notified whenever we have classes. Jessica Bitutu, what is it? Mm, Now, allow me to end this class and ask your friends why they are reluctant to attend classes. I'm taking roll call. I've already taken note of those ones who are in class. Thank you. Have a good evening. Whatever you are preparing for your supper, remember to SMS me your supper so that I share. I also enjoy with you. Thank you. See you tomorrow.